Good day, everybody. Welcome. This is FMA Discussion. This is episode 280, and tonight we are kicking off the PTK Theme episodes. So tonight is part one, and tonight we're going to be covering the different organizations, the many different organizations, and the kind of negative perception of PTK. But we're going to be coming from a positive aspect and trying to resolve and not point fingers or bring more negativity to the existing negativity. That's not going to solve anything. So that's going to be the theme of this. How can we change status quo, right? If we bring more negativity, we're not going to be improving on status quo. We're not going to be doing anybody any good. So that is definitely not the direction we'll be going. I hope upon conclusion of these episodes, people get a better understanding of PTK and the different organizations, and hopefully promotes growth, cross-training, and changes the perception that's currently, again, status quo. And all that. So those are some of the goals that I want to try to achieve here. And so, without further ado, the guests tonight that are going to be speaking on this are both Tuhons, Jack, and Belton, and I will be bringing them up. Good evening, guys. Thank you for coming on. Appreciate it.
Hello.
And you too.
I'm going to turn up the volume a bit. All right. So you guys kind of heard the intro as far as what we're going to try to achieve through this episode. Again, folks that are just jumping in, if you are, tell us where you're watching from, smash that like button. And again, for those of you just jumping in that perhaps did not catch the opening, again, this is going to be about attempting to improve status quo. Okay. We're not going to be pointing fingers, bringing up names, and all that. Again, that is really not going to be helpful. So we're going to go really in the complete opposite direction. All right. So, however, we are going to be truthful, respectfully truthful. And some of the questions I'm going to ask these gentlemen, they're going to give their opinions on stuff and how basically to improve what's depending on my questions I ask them. So first off, guys, I just want to, again, thank you for coming on. I hope it's not too late for you guys. So actually, it's kind of nice. It's quiet here. So again, it's no secret in PTK. A lot of different organizations. Right? In other words, when I just did the KI theme, I think you can count on one hand the organizations. You got the Canada Group, Kiro, Ricketts Sanction, Maestro Norman. And then you start getting to Yuli, but it's Atsubu, Ray Floros. But for like pure KI, again, 4 or 5. PTK, I'm going to say conservatively, you guys know better than me, perhaps double. And I could be off on that. So, Tuhon Belton, let's start with you. So, why, two-part question. Why so many organizations, good or bad?
And I can only speak from my experience and from what I know as far as being involved in the organization. When I get to train with Grand Tuhon, and I would ask questions like, who are these guys? These are other Tuhons. I do my research. I always try to at least understand not just what one person says, but really listen to where these men and women have come from. I feel like when I was explained to it, it was more eras is probably the proper word. You got the 80s eras, Tuhons, the late 70s, 90s, that kind of the layout as far as Tuhons and batches and generations of it. And, I also got to hear when GT went to the United States, and then just kind of the groups and the teachings and the, the knowledge that was dispensed when GT was working with military and or overseas in different countries with this certain group. So it seemed like, I think, when you have the responsibility of a grandmaster whose purpose is to spread the art. I mean, let's take for example, and I know this is a PTK discussion, but like GM Bobby, he went to New Zealand for some time. Then he was in the United States. Look at Grandmaster or Professor Remy Braces. from the Philippines, U.S., and around the world. So if you really just look at the migration patterns and understand who he taught to, what was taught, um, the curriculum at that time, and the focus of that curriculum, you can kind of see which of Tuhans have really gravitated towards and or really dove in depth into that area or expertise. And then you've got these other batches of Tuhans and the newer batches and whatnot. And I consider myself the tail end of some of the old school guys right into the new school Tuhans, and or they call New Han. It was kind of a funny. I don't know who made that up. It was kind
I
of
remember seeing that. Tuhon.
New Han. Yeah, I forgot somebody coined that phrase, and it was pretty interesting. I don't
Go
really
figure.
care because to me, Tuhon just it's like a black belt. If you, yeah, I talk to any black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, when they become a black belt, it's almost like their journey just began again. And and I apologize for my voice, guys. I had fights over the weekend. Trying to yell over hundreds of people was just a lot. But again, going back to the black belt, it's almost like they had to re-explore their basics and their fundamentals and see their interpretations and whatnot, and how it applies to them and their teaching and how they're going to just to give that same information to students. As a black belt, as a Tuhon or a higher level practitioner slash instructor, you have to understand the depth of the subject matter you're teaching, and or if you are going to teach, at least be honest with yourself and say, this is what I know. I think there's a lack of, and I'm only speaking either for myself or maybe for what I've seen, a lack of honesty in people who are given a title. And this is for any martial art. This is not a PTK thing. There's a big responsibility in calling yourself a black belt or a guru or instructor, and the spotlight's on you. Whether it's challenges and or like, well, what do you know? Um, those who know, and if you own a school and you teach, the best thing you can do as an instructor is say, that's a great question. Let me research that and answer it for you, rather than trying to pretend like you know it. And I think that's where a lot of these people in any art, in any higher level degree or whatever it is, get into trouble. They try to make something up that they're not. They try to play to the crowd of who they're trying to please. And then that's when you get into trouble. And then you've got, people like, wait a minute, you're a fraud or you're this, or you're that. So going back to this whole factions of different organizations, I think when GT would teach a group, like when I went, it was called the Tribe of 12, I believe. And there was 12 of us at the time that was training diligently for what, 2 to 3 weeks, 14, 16 hours a day. And I used to go on the December months away, which was crazy because I just realized my tickets were way more expensive. I was like, what would I do it? And I got, again, for me personally, I got material that I felt like was just almost a mix, a mashup of things, but Tri V was the focus. And I would run into another Tuhon, and I'm sure if I touch hands with Tuhon Jack right now, he will call out certain things like say, hey, this is that set. And I'm like, you've got to touch hands with me, Tuhon. I don't know what you're talking about. And then I'll touch hands with them and I'm like, oh yeah, that. So why did I get that? And why, those are the questions maybe I would have to sit down and say, G2, why did you teach it that way? Which we can get into later in discussion. I'll let Tuhon Jack speak because I had kind of the answer when I asked him personally. But yeah, that's my opinion on that. And I think it's great to learn from all these Tuhans because if you go to, I mean, I'm wearing it right now. This is Tuhon Phillips' sweatshirt he gave to me in one of the, I forgot when, we were in a hotel room together. We were roomies. And then he just, hey, man, here you go. And I'm like, oh, but it says Philip Galinas. So I don't want people to think I'm Tuhon Phillip. But, and the man has a depth of knowledge. But he even will admit that, he runs into Tuhon Leslie Buck. And then he's, where did that come from? When I seen that one. Um, so I believe we all have something to offer, and even now, and exploring Sabayan, I have I coined it my 5 count, my 3, 4, 5 count variations, because that's the way it's easier for me to teach. But it's not mine. It's GT's material. I'm just finding a different way to not label it, but kind of organize it so I can teach it. So, I think going to different Tuhans with different teaching methodologies and teaching backgrounds. I mean, Tuhon Jack is a teacher. Are you not, Tuhon Jack?
Yeah,
You know,
I'm not a teacher.
he's an educator. So, as educators, that's a skill in itself. And we're going to find ways to give you information. And we might have a different way. I'm not going to say better, different way to present material that you can absorb. And you might like, man, I learned from Tuhon Jack, in such a great way. I mean, man, he's the guy for me. And great, honestly, I mean, awesome. I mean, I might have different material, but if you connect with that instructor, go for it. If you want to dive into PTK, then seek out those Tuhons and learn from them, because it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And as you go deeper, you're going to go, wow, this is a deep art. Unless you're willing to spend 10, 15, 20, 30 years with Grand Tuhon training every day, since he did that with his grandfather when he was a very little kid, then you'll get the system. But no one, I think it's just too deep and too much great interpretations of it and expressions of it, that it's like a lifelong thing.
Okay. Yeah. No. Well said, and thank you. Again, we're definitely going to get into the different organizations and all that. And far as the politics, I got that definitely staged down the line. As far as questions, so same question to you, Tuhon Jack. Again, the question being, why so many organizations? Good or bad? Indifferent.
I'm going to answer the second one first, and the answer to the second one is good. And one of the reasons why it's good is because the survival of the system at one point rested on the shoulders of one man. The second one is good. And now you have different people who have taken this information, kind of digested and reconstructing it, re-engineering it, so it lasts another generation at least. And so as like kind of Belton alluded to, you may not find it to your liking being delivered by one particular person, but you might find it to your liking through another person. And I think some of that comes through the different organizations. And when we go back to the first question, why there's so many organizations, it was one place, GT, and then through various forms of political intrigue, things started splintering off. So I often refer them to the split 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and whatnot, case of personalities. And regardless of whatever personal interactions cause those splits, every time you have one of those schisms, someone takes what they had and kind of flies with it. And so split 1.0 was with Tuhon Bill, and that's where we got, actually, PTI was actually it beforehand. That's when Tuhon Bill and GT Leo were together. And then PTI split off, and we had the Grand Mysterium, the PTD Church Grand Global Alliance. That was with the GT. And then who came into prominence next was, I believe, Tim Wade. And they had a good road together. And then eventually he split off, and I believe that would be like split number 2. And then he formed the PTK-GO, or PTK Treasure Kali Global Organization, more affectionately known as PTK SMF. I believe next in the schism of things was Tuhon Ramel, if I'm not mistaken. And he ends up having PTK-WF, or the Pikiti Treasure Kali World Federation. And regardless of the reasons for the split, he takes off, and he has a different approach and different take on the system. And then after that, we have PTTA, the Pikiti Treasure Tactical Association, headed by Tuhon Buck. I'm sorry, not Tuhon, Tuhon Jarrett.
Right.
And then those were the main ones. And then now we have PTK Katapunan, headed by Tuhon Mick and Tuhon J and Tuhon Bob. And there's other smaller clubs that are going around, but those are the main ones that are feeding in all these students. And so when you look at these divides, I think it originally started off as like, who has the real system, who has the whole system, and various other sophomoric silliness. But when you look at it now, you look back on it and you start realizing that those are all pretty legitimate forms, and it's how people regurgitated it. A lot of the silliness you see, people wanting that sense of authenticity because they want that aspect of the market. They want to assuage that part of their ego. Whereas I think what's more happening is that we're getting to see how PTK Persia has developed over these decades, and now we're seeing it. And I think now we have a larger world stage, and people on the outside are starting to look into the Bikini Treasure world, and either they are unsure because they see the political strife, or they're completely repulsed and disgusted and just want to stay away from it. So I think it's kind of up to the current generation to reel ourselves in and say, "Hey, wait a second, it's a great art no matter what this is, and the market is big enough for everyone, and you can certainly have a selection." Um, One of my favorite references is uh, the Christmas movie, A Miracle on 34th Street, where the Macy's Santa is making references to for other customers to go see the gimbal Santa. And I don't think there's any harm in that. I think if someone who I'm talking to is looking at me as a potential instructor, and they're looking for something that has to do a little bit more cohesively with law enforcement, I'm going to refer them to Tuhon Jared. If someone's really caught up in like wanting to learn the Filipino terms and whatnot, I'll say, hey, you should go see Tuhon Ramel. He's really big on that. If someone was really big on the military component and and really wanted to kind of score away something, I might say, hey, go see Tuhon Tim Wade. And if someone wanted something that was a little bit more mixed and wanted to become a good fighter in a very short period of time that incorporated bikini and maybe other things to make them a more well-rounded fighter, I have no problems recommending them to Tuhon Belton, because he puts this stuff and acid tests them. So I think it's certainly a place for everyone.
Yeah, no. Well said. And which is going to segue into my next question. Well, I don't think it's bad. I obviously I don't have a dog in a fight here, but I think there's good at it when you have different sanctions, particularly if the student takes advantage of that and is encouraged. Emphasis on encouraged to go see these different organizations and teachers, for the betterhood of their journey. I think anything that stifles that, I think is toxic, based on if any of those organizations or teachers do that. And we'll get into that deeper. So my second question is, should organizations as a whole promote, so we established as different organizations and kind of why. Should organizations as a whole, for the betterhood of the system and more importantly the students, should they promote cross-training among their students? And how do each of you guys handle this? So Tuhon Belton.
I'm going to talk about that in regards to another art or a couple arts, because there's similarities, right? If I'm a Muay Thai fighter, a Muay Thai student, and they went up to me within the first month of taking Muay Thai and said, so I'm thinking of cross training in that Muay Thai school in that city and this city and that city. And I was like, well, what's your goal? And these are true conversations. So that's why I'm bringing this up. I want to be a fighter. I want to learn the art of Muay Thai. I go, then you're going to get a mixed mashup of convoluted information, because each instructor has, and the only difference between PTK is we all got one source, right? But sometimes in other arts, you get different. It's still the art, but there's different expressions of it. And I said, if you're doing this for the art and you're looking to grow in the art, I'm not going to understand you as a student-teacher relationship if you're just jumping around. And then you're going to go, oh, at this gym, I learned this and that, and I've noticed that they focused on this, and that one I noticed they did this and that. And there's only so much information, and they're going to get so confused. But if they stayed a little bit longer, got their foundation and their basics, and then they went, you know what? I'm going to check out that school. I'm like, yeah, go for it, man. That's awesome. I heard they got great clinch game with the elbows and knees. What about that school? Oh, they're very tricky. They got nice sweeps and dumps. But we're talking, you've been with me 2 years. You've had 3 fights, 5 fights, 10 fights, and you're enhancing your foundational skills. And when the teacher from XYZ school speaks, you're absorbing that material in such a way like, I see what he's saying. Kind of like what my instructor says. I love that different spin on it. But if you're just getting into PTK and you're just jumping around with different Tuhons and you haven't developed a relationship with your own Tuhon or your own instructor or your own group, then I think you're just getting a mixed mashup of information, which is still great information. Don't get me wrong, but you're not understanding even your basic footwork, your basic strikes, your basic angles, your the basic concepts, then I'm going to say that's probably not the best approach. Um, unless you specifically said my goal is not to become a PTK student of anyone. I want to just learn PTK and just bounce around and gather knowledge. Good. You don't want to grow in the art. Get it. You just gather information. But thanks for being clear. Then at least I know in my heart as an instructor, I'm not going to really consider you my student. You're
Mm.
you're welcome to my school. And I have fighters from other schools that train with me, and I see them at the fights, and I see them do some stuff that I've taught, and I'm happy, I'm proud, but it's not my fighter.
Mm.
He's one of my students in class when he's in class, but it was very clear who he was with, and I respected that. I
Okay.
just told him the only difference is you'll never fight one of my fighters because you know them, and I coach you
Yeah, yeah.
in class. So the same thing goes for any art. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You jump around different schools. They might do more a guard type approach. They might be heavily into throws and same art, but then their foundation just sucks. They can't do a basic hip escape, or they can't even do a basic. So translate that across the board to PTK, and I think there's some of that applies. If I went to Tuhon Jack and I said, hey, I want to learn PTK, and he's basically teaching me footwork and then 5 attacks, and I'm like, cool, man, thanks. And then I bounce it, and I come back. And I'm like, I'm gonna go dive into Dustin Methodist because I heard about that. Then I'm gonna like, cool, man, thanks. It's been 2 weeks. I'm gonna bounce over here, and you're not really seeing the whole picture. Then I don't know which one to be like. Well, then what's your goal? I mean, why are you even here? So it's hard for the teacher-student relationship to develop if they keep bouncing around, and it's hard for us to really open ourselves up to dedicate a lot of that time, because as an instructor, I can tell you right now, I dedicate a lot of time, and sometimes it's not just class; it's a lot of time, and time is valuable to me because I got a family, I've got other people who depend on me, and I'm not going to waste my time. So I think it's great. I think once you've established yourself with that, where you're at in your foundation in the art that you want to practice, then go seek out with make it clear that you're going to do that, and then gather knowledge and grow, and bring it, bring it back to the tribe so we can all learn it together too and grow
Yeah.
together. That's what I tell my guys. Go out there, bring it back to the tribe, and let's practice. Let's do this. I mean, that guy's a great guy. I'd love to hear what you got out of it. But that's because you also have to approach it as an instructor. I'm not worried. I'm not threatened. I don't have an ego
Mm.
about it. I could care less. If I never earned your loyalty or your respect, then what am I concerned about? I'm getting pissed off that you visited somebody else. But if that was established in the first place, I shouldn't be worried. I should be comfortable in my own skin as an instructor.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Well said. Tuhon Jack, same question.
Repeat it again so I can make sure I'm more
Yeah.
concise
So
with my answer.
again, like Tuan Belton said, assuming the student had some established tenure with a teacher, kind of had the basics or fundamentals, what have you, promoting cross training despite the different sanctions
Gotcha.
and maybe the negativity among the politics. Your opinion on that, and do you promote it?
I do promote it. I do it because right now, especially in the COVID world, we are kind of made the world a bit smaller because we are starting to
Mhm.
do all things online. And when I have a student who comes to me for information, I try to be very careful about not brainwashing them. I could certainly kind of indoctrinate them into this particular way, but if the idea is really a good idea, then it should be a good idea if you have free thought. So I tell them, go. The market's big. There's lots of people out there. Go out there and sniff around and see what you like, because I might think I have good stuff, but it may not suit you, and I'm very cognizant of that. The other aspect to this is that there are some instructors who this is their bread and butter. They're trying to secure their student body, because whether it's ego or whether it's because that means a meal on the table or whatever. My well-being financially does not come from this, because as Belton pointed out, I'm an art teacher. So I don't have a commercial gain on this. This is more a case of I love the art, and this is the art of my ancestors. And so I want people to make a knowledgeable choice. And the only way they can make an informed and knowledgeable choice is if they go around and sniff around and see what's best for them. And if they find something they like better somewhere else, more power to them. I'm not going to be a snake oil salesman. I'll tell you exactly what you're going to get from me, or what I'm hoping you'll get from me. And if you're on board, great. If not, that's okay. No harm, no foul. There's nothing personal about it. But that way, also, folks don't feel like I'm trying to entrap them in something. You know, go. I have an idea what you might experience, but I'm not going to bias you. Go check it out for yourself, because like adolescents, you can tell an adolescent all you want, but they're going to make their own decisions. You know, don't do drugs, but they're going to do drugs. You know, don't go out late at night. They're going to go out late at night. With PTK, it's like, go find this out for yourself, because I don't want you to take my word for this. And so, and the other aspect of this is the gene pool. I think that cross-training thing, when you look down at the remaining descendants in the art, you're looking to make the gene pool stronger. Once we've ensured system survival, you make the gene pool stronger by making sure you have good people, good-hearted people who are willing to train and are open-minded. You will not do that by making them isolated zealots in anything. So it's really important to not camp them in. And that way they know that you gave them the power of free choice, and that you were looking out for them rather than out for your own agenda.
Yeah, I really like that, because then it's not indentured servitude. You know what I mean? Like, you know, and I find that they're going to be respectful of that and appreciate you, you know, when you instill that in students, all that. At least I have, from instructors who've made a point of expressing that to me. You know, it actually enlightened my view of them. You know, as far as how do you guys handle, you know, relations with other organizations that perhaps, in other words, what I'm getting here is, for the sake of your students, maybe you like them, you don't like them, and all that. Dean needs a goatee.
He does. I'll be the first one to say it, but now I'm the second one to say it, because Alvin said it first.
I could try it.
So, what's your question? How do we handle the?
So, Alvin, you interrupted my mind. So, how do each of you handle your relations with other organizations, despite maybe you're not fond, but I guess fond of them, or perhaps you might have some not so positive things, but for the sake of your students and role modeling?
Well, one, have a goatee.
I guess goatees on just kidding, Alvin.
No, no. So if you guys know me, the FMA community, I'm pretty easygoing with a lot of groups. I've never really had problems with any groups. I think it's just I don't know if it's. I think it's because I train in multiple arts, so it's really hard to peg me down as that guy. What I mean by that is, if I was Kyokushin Karate for 27 years and I just ditched my organization to do something else, I think the first organization might have an issue, or because what's up, you know. But I mean, look what I teach: Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Bikini Tershakali, Berlin to walk, Dr. Kelly's Ward and Defense System. I do some CLOT. It's just, I think everyone knows where my heart's at, and who I am at, where I'm at. So, you know, when I found GT, I was already doing other FMA systems. Same with G and Bobby, and I also was very clear about it. I made sure that I had a discussion with them. I think a lot of it is communication too. You know, it didn't matter what the organization was. I was always very friendly, because to me, it's I don't feel threatened. I like the brotherhood. I think another person teaching FMA is awesome. I just had a student stop in from Florida who's under Tuhon Apollo, and he was just like, "Hey, I just want to pay respects and visit." I'm like, "Oh, dude, come on in." Had a private FMA student. I'm like, "Let's all play Sabayan," you know, and kind of like the universal. Let's see where you're at, you know. So we just had fun, you know. I think somebody asked GT once, and this is just hearsay, but in terms of what I heard GT told the person, why is Belton doing all these other arts? And GT goes, oh, Belton's researching. Tuhon Belton's researching and looking at different ways to counter different things. And I was like, oh, wow, thanks, GT. I mean, I love the other art too, but sure, I'll counter all those other things too. But I think it's just also clarity in your intentions. When I approached GT, he said, when I went to Philippines to visit him for the first time, after he told me, "Go Philippines, you are related to me. You are Ilonggo. You must learn your own art." Yes, sir. I was very clear. I was like, GT, I'd love to learn a little bit more about where I'm from, and I have family in Iloilo, and somehow through marriage, we're related to the Gahes, and yeah, I mean, I'd love to learn. I've heard so much about PTK, but I do these things, and is that going to be a problem? No, good for you. Okay, so when you're clear about that in the forefront, I think if it ever comes back, like, why are you doing that? It's like, well, we talked about this. I've had grandmasters, and I'll say who's like, why are you doing that Brazilian jiu-jitsu? That's bullshit. I'm like, yeah, but it's fun. I've been doing that quite a long time, since 1994. Okay, but you never mind. We have everything in the system. You don't need for that bullshit. And it's not G2 who said that, by the way. It's somebody else. And so, and it's not even FMA. So I was like, yeah, but don't worry about it. I'm honoring the arts, and I'm always going to honor the arts. Of what I teach and represent. So I think just it comes down to an individual. When the Chenza Kali guys came and they reached out to me, they're like, hey, Tuhon, we know you're in Washington. We're going to be in Tacoma. I was like, hey, I'd love to come by and visit. And I came by and paid respect. And I think that respect thing, it just kind of builds. And now, Chenza Kali, cool guys. And so I'll always try to be very friendly and very amicable, and try to show that brotherhood that really is needed in FMA outside of just PTK. So I have no qualms in anybody. I mean, if I do, then I try to squash it. And if there are qualms out there, if there's issues, then maybe I don't know about it. Maybe you guys don't like me because of my goatee or something.
I think the goatee could be is a legitimate issue, lack thereof.
I know, man. You got to talk to Alvin. What's up with that?
Alvin, and now that Brian's saying something about lamb chops, and I'm not sure what he means by that. Granted, I'm kind of
Sideburns.
not with the status quo. I'm kind of old fashioned, so diamond stud earring. Not anytime soon, Brian. Tuhon Jack, same question.
Just handling people from other organizations?
Yeah. So in other words, like how do you go about it? But also from your personal way, but also in the sense of maybe you're role modeling for your students and all that.
There's a few motivators here. And one thing is, and I've said this on several occasions, here we are, inheritors of a great martial art, but we don't have to inherit the biases of those who came before us. And so I try to keep that in the back of my mind, that we're inheriting a martial art. We're not inheriting this kind of residual tribalism that pit tribes against each other. We're past that. We're adults. We need to interact with each other as adults. And so while you hear things on the pipeline, and maybe some of them are distasteful, you also have to kind of question them, understand like maybe this is not true, or maybe this is taken from a slant from someone who has an axe to grind. And I try to keep that in mind. I know I would want to be judged on my own merits and not because of a particular association. The world tends to get in trouble when we start judging people based on gross generalizations. Oh, these people, because he belongs to that group of people, this is what he must think or he does. I think it's very important to not do that. I don't do that as a public educator, and I've learned to not do that in FMA and Pikiti Church specifically, because it just has not done any good to anyone. It's created an environment of exclusivity, which has separated people, and perhaps for the most artificial reasons. And
Yeah.
the other aspect, the other aspect of this is my last name. You know, my sons share my last name, and you know, I don't want to do things that makes carrying that last name burdensome. So I try to keep that in mind that you know I want to act in accordance to how I feel and how I believe, and I don't want that to affect my sons adversely because I want them to grow up with a fair chance, and I want them to not judge others the way sometimes others judge whoever harshly. So, and in terms of dealing with other people from other organizations, everyone gets a fair shot for me. Do they mess it up afterwards? That's up to them. But especially in the advent of the Global Carenza Project, everyone got a basically a fair shot for me for sure.
I think so.
Can I add? You know, when I started with GT, it was some changes were happening within the organization, and I've never truly met like Tuhon Ramel. And during COVID, I showed up in a Zoom training to support him, and it was such a warm greeting. He was like, "Tuhon Belton, oh my gosh, he's here in the training. Hey, how are you doing?" And I was like, "Hey, how are you doing?" So like Tuhon Jack, it's hard for me to judge somebody based on what somebody says. I've got to experience that myself, and I don't do that. Like you said, we're all grown men, and I go to Tuhon Philip to a seminar on Zoom. I try to attend others. It's as busy as I am. I try to attend and support Tuhon Arlene. I think I went to hers, and just show support because you know it's pretty cool for them to see that I'm supporting because I don't pretend to know everything, and I love learning from other people and just even hearing them teach. I love watching people teach. Sometimes it's not even the material, just watching how they present the information and really learning their style of teaching. And I've also had it where being associated with GT and people are like, "Oh yeah, PTK, man, you guys have a lot of problems," or yada yada yada. And I'm like, "But man, you're actually a really nice guy." And I'm like, so I got to do my part in representing the art, and I'm doing my
Mm.
best. I'm really trying. I'm trying to show people that, hey, come learn from us. It's a great, disregard like Tim and Jack said. Just disregard all the stuff and come in for the knowledge. And we have the responsibility to keep the system alive. And I think the time is now. And I think there's a lot of us who are, as COVID hit, has brought us together because as much as there's isolation, the web and the technology has made us reach out to one another, and we started just kind of a lot of walls have been broken down. Not that there were any, not that Tim and Jack and I had walls, but honestly, we started communicating. Just what was it, Tim and Jack? The Global Carenza, or was it something else
Yep.
before
No, it
that?
was the Global Carenza Project. I had seen you around on the internet, and then when Paolo casted me for the Global Carenza Project, I'm like, this guy moves well. I want to know more about him. And I mean, we're colleagues now.
Yeah, yeah. So, and we've had intimate discussions. We had we've been on the phone, and it was just like, man, pretty like-minded. That's awesome. And I would have not known that if not the approach of a Global Carenza project. And I think sometimes your characters and what a catalyst like Paulo Rubio, and we all know who he is. We've seen his posts, and some of us are afraid to ask the questions or pose the statement or whatever, and he does it for us,
Yeah,
and he
now
does it
Paolo.
so he does it so uncomfortably to where you have to address it. And uh, people are like, your buddy Paulo. I'm like, oh, so what are you trying to say about me? Yeah, but he's your buddy. I'm like, yeah, I mean, awesome. He's a great guy. I got to meet him. We did some films together. I went to Canada, and Rubia can tell you his interaction with me is just like, hey, you're a pretty open-minded guy. So I think though everyone has a part to play, and my part, if Rubio's part is to bring out things in the open, to beg the question, to kind of stir the pot a little bit, to bring the uncomfortable question that nobody wants to ask, so be it. That's his part, and he's doing a great job at it, and he's really trying to bring people together in an orthodox manner. And maybe some of us don't see it that way, but it's working. And Jack's part is maybe for the Global Carenza. My part might be just being an ambassador to multi-systems to, like you, Dean, and just being that person. I don't know. And I'm just kind of going along for the ride and enjoying the journey.
I think it's all true. I just think, again, before I segue into the next topic area, I think more as time goes on, I think all this politics, particularly in PTK and all that, I think will diminish over time. I really do, because the younger people coming in, they don't have a dog in the fight in the first place, and they just want to cross train and be the best version of themselves. So I just think through years into our attrition, I just think it's going to fade out. Which, okay, well, I'm not a PTK practitioner anymore. I did leave because the next subject area, the politics. I was caught in the fire with Sayoc, Atienza, PTK, could wear the shirts, and I was like, yeah, this is not me. I'm out. Unfortunately. So, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that's experienced this or something similar, maybe a different year or different circumstances, what have you. But there's an obvious perception of PTK, which some of it's negative. And I don't think it's all negative. I wouldn't be doing this. I think there's extreme positives in PTK, hence why you guys are on and all that. But getting back to the unfortunate negativity, I'm sorry, Tuhon Jack. Why? What's
Why the negativity?
Why? Yeah.
There's, all right. So I'm going to preface this by saying that I've got almost 3 decades in this art, and I've seen a lot and heard of a lot of perspectives from different people. And I would say the beginnings of this really stem from ego. Feeling like, there's a sense of exclusivity. If we know this amount of knowledge, we have this kind of gnosis, and if you don't know it, then you're not part of us, and it becomes an us versus them thing. And then if you compound on it dollar values, sometimes people, by having that influence, they're trying to ensure that the time is well spent because there's a monetary return on things. And so that affected some people, not everyone, but some people really made that a big part of this. Some of it is that sense of ingratiation of belonging to something. If you look at some of the practices, like, for example, like, you weren't allowed to wear a shirt. What harm does a shirt do? But that level of kind of sociological control resembles the kind of stuff you see that happens in cults. If you get people to follow along and believe in certain rituals and stuff, and you change that way of thinking, you get people to buy in, and your collective us becomes a bigger us. And that becomes a bigger cash cow, so to speak. So there's all those things that kind of contribute to that. And I think if you can start divorcing yourself from some of that thinking that, you should be allowed to train in an amazing martial art without having to buy the commercial package, so to speak, what's been sold out there. Do you still have your freedom to think and express yourself as you need be? Are your actions trying to be controlled? You have to look at stuff like that, because regardless of PTK or whatever martial art, those are warning signs. And those are things that you want to avoid, because in the end, it's just a martial art. It's nothing more than that. It's just a way of fighting someone. If you take it more than that, then, you're entitled to do what you want, but it becomes a very unhealthy thought pattern.
Yeah, like if you're going beyond the scope that, hey, look, this is just an art, a side thing for you to do on your free time, whatever, and you're letting that interfere and getting to allegiances and this, and I'm standing for this guy. What makes, I tell you, what cracks me up? You got these young folks, they're impressionable, and they get associated with a plan, art, what have you, organization, and they jump on the bandwagon, and they weren't even around when this stuff kicked off. Like, they weren't even part of it, or don't even know the full story, but they're like gung-ho. And I just find that amusing when I hear folks, go off like that, and I'm thinking, like, how interesting. You weren't even there. Like,
I get that a lot, actually. I experience that a lot.
Tuhon, Belton,
people tell me how it was.
Yeah.
Happens to have been there for some of that. So
Yeah. We got Danny Terrell. Isn't he another goatee guy?
yeah, he is. Just where's it better than most?
So Tuhon, Bell, same question. Why negativity? I mean, why is it not all PTK, but why is it that aura of negativity, that negative perception?
You know, honestly, I think GT is a very passionate guy. He's very passionate. If you spend any time with him, and most grandmasters are so passionate. Um, every time I would think GT is thinking a certain way, when I talk to him, it's not what I thought it was. An example: oh, GT must be upset at me, and I talk to him and say, hey, Belt, how's your dad? How are you doing? Hey, cousin, how are you doing? Calls me cousin. Oh, good. And I'm in the back of my mind, I'm like, I thought he was not happy with me or something's going on. And I found out that it's sometimes it's not even GT. It's the people around him. Like you said, you weren't even there. I think people just like, that's my. It's funny because you notice it's something in your grandmaster, then having a school and students and being an instructor for a while now, you start to see it in your own students. They get passionate for you, and you're like, yo, chill out, dude. That guy and we knew each other quite a long time. That stuff, it's always somebody else. I always think there's just too many people involved sometimes in a topic or situation, and everyone's, you start playing telephone and it just changes over time. And the reality is, if you just talk to the man himself, it's just like, no, I have no problem with him. And you're like, so I think part of this, negativity and whatever it is, and Till and Jackson kind of alluded to some of it, whether it's our group has more of the system, or it's, that guy, he's not respecting GD, he's doing his own thing now, or whatever. You don't know the dynamics. You don't know what discussion he had with GT. You don't know where he's at in his situation. You don't know that.
Yeah.
And I'm just making stuff up, but like his wife is in the hospital, this, that, and the other, and you don't know this, you don't know that, you don't know why he canceled the seminar. I mean, I'm just coming up with all kinds of scenarios where suddenly it becomes like a thing, and then just chismoso thing, and then everyone just starts getting in on that bandwagon, and suddenly it's like, it's the problem with big organizations. Is just that it's like a large family. You have so much. There's just so much. The growth has its own issues too, and the people just start speaking for other people. They start convoluting the story, and when you want to go back to the source, just talk to the guy. Talk to the man himself. And sometimes that changes in a matter of weeks. It might change in 2 years, and maybe it's just something GT was just thinking about at that moment and just needed to get over. Or I don't know. So uh, the thing that's just growing pains of an organization too. That's it's a good thing and a bad thing, and it shows you how big the organization can possibly be. And I don't know a lot of organizations that have grown too big that haven't faced problems. I mean, look at history repeats itself. Look at any large organization,
Mm.
any large martial arts organization as the split offs, the this, XYZ martial art. Now there's two organizations or this group, and then 50 schools went with that group. I mean, look at Taekwondo and that group, and it just happens. And so it's a
Mm.
natural evolution of things. But as more people get involved in an organization and their ego gets in place and they get more rank and more power, and then they start acting up, and suddenly it's like, well, I've been here this long and that long, and you're going to run into that, and just my grandmaster told me once, be prepared for that. Be prepared for students and people growing up in your ranks, and just all you can do is just hold your integrity and your character and yourself, and lead properly, and that way you can look yourself in the mirror every day. So I can't speak for a lot of people. I don't know too many of the backstories, and to me they're just stories. That's so funny when Tuhon Belton, that's XYZ person. You already talked to them. I go, they did nothing wrong to me. Like,
Hmm.
so why can't I talk to them? I go, I'm fucking 46. Oh, sorry. So 46 years old. I'm a grown man. tell me who I can or can't talk to.
I know. Isn't that the best when they tell like who you can affiliate yeah.
Here's a rule of thumb I give, and I've even told my grandmaster no. Somebody goes, "Hey Belton, can you give me John's number?" I've had grandmasters ask me for a person's contact number, and I say no, and they're like, "What?" I go, "I don't just give out people's cell phones. It's not a thing of mine." I go, "Let me ask permission, because I don't expect you to give out my cell phone. Why am you're gonna give out my personal number to a stranger?" Or even if it's grandmaster, it's a rule I've always kept. And so then I'll ask permission, grandmaster. And this is several grandmasters. Give me Billy's number. Okay, I'll tell him to contact you. So I don't get involved. I don't care what grandmaster level you're at. I respect people. And one thing because I've learned the hard way. I gave out someone's number and they were like, "Why did you give out my number?" I really don't want that person to have it. I have no connection to that. And I was like, oh. And ever since then, I've made a rule. And everyone who knows me knows I won't give out your number unless you give me permission or I can put you in the same thread, because that's just not the way I operate. You can be the greatest grand something XYZ, and you can say, "Give me Dean Franco's number." I'm like, "Nope. You can contact him yourself via messenger, or I can ask permission. Or do you give me permission to give your number?" Because at the end of the day, I respect you, your grandmaster. We're also men. We got to respect each other and respect our families and things like that. So, Dean, you can tell me all the horrible things about Tuhon Jack, like you told me in the past, and I don't believe Tuhon Jack. I still love you. I don't care what Dean says.
I know. I'll say that to the end. The reasons about Tuhon Jack. I mean, but I guess we can talk about it now. I mean,
Yeah.
I get Danny's
All the stuff on the bathroom walls are true.
Goatee guy. Danny's a little confused about the goatee. They were saying I should grow one, Danny. All right. Next, the dramas. With PTK, like with KI, I hate to say this, it's kind of it's passive aggressive. It's kind of a unique way they do it in KI. And I'm not crazy about it, to be honest, but in PTK, it's kind of like out in front, man. Just and I know I don't want this to come across way to the audience, but I kind of respect that more than the behind the scenes. I'm not saying any of it's good, neither is good. I'm just saying the choice of the two, if I had to pick one. But why is it the out in front, and can it be improved upon, or is it just too big because of all the sanctions? So, Tuhon Jack.
It's weird. It's kind of like a non-issue for me, because the reality is, and people will better. Can it get better? It'll get better once people get better at their social interactions, when they start erasing some of this tribalism, you versus me, us versus them. But this is going to be some of the tribute to Piketty Treasure in the future, if this can be done well, which is and this is not going to be a happy topic for some, but the strength of the system will really be judged when it can hold its own without GT Leo. And that's not meant as a disrespect to him, but you don't want a system to die with the person that held it. If the strength of the system, if it's a strong system, will last beyond that. And so when we look at future generations of people that are going to be my students, Belton students, and their students, is the system strong enough and their tenacity strong enough to keep it going? We don't know that yet. It's largely untested. And so that's what we'll have to see. And I know, and not to get into dark talk or anything like that, but that's the legacy of something. The people who came up with math, they're long gone, but math still goes on. So are we going to see that from PTK? We'll wait to see, and that'll really largely depend on how we handle ourselves now. Do we keep ourselves as separate different factions and bickering, or can we just get along? And what I'm kind of embracing is not unification, because everyone has different ideas about how things should be done, what should be charged for their services. It's not about unification at all. It's more about harmonious interaction. Can you get along with someone? Can you work together? And can you just not, act like an adolescent in a cafeteria arguing about who's the greatest rock band of all time? Is it the Beatles? No, it's the Rolling Stones, and it's that kind of stupidity that goes on.
Well said. I mean, exactly. Yeah, right. I don't think you guys should unify. I mean, right. There's just
It's pointless.
robotic. I think you guys should definitely keep the differentiation. I think that adds flavor, differences, different takes, and nuances, and all that.
And unification will mean that everyone has to run something the same way, which is people are not going to abandon their way of doing things that is tried and true to take over someone else's method.
Yeah.
So it's best for everyone to just do their thing and just learn to get along.
Yeah. I agree with that. I don't agree with like trying to unify or like that. But like you said, that even despite that, the organizations can just coexist and act maturely and propagate cross training and for the benefit of the art and the student. I think obviously that's a better path.
And to go back in terms of like the PTK community, maybe airing out the differences in public. I mean, I really, when I think about it, I don't see too many people who are averse to sparring. I mean, people could always get it out that way. And, as far as my own efforts, I mean, in order to educate myself, instead of just judging people based on hearsay, I will take opportunities to try to train with them. And the PTK Katapunan run by Tuhon's Jay and Mick and Bob, I'll attend whenever I humanly can. Because I want to see other people teach. Like Belton said, like he enjoyed seeing people teach, regardless of the material. He wanted to see how they presented it, and they provide such an amazing opportunity to do that. Because not necessarily just with them, but the people who are part of the PTK Katapunan community. So if people have not done that yet, they should, because it helps you avoid taking this kind of superior parochial attitude. That's why periodically I send out free, Zoom links to my Zoom classes, because if people want to cross that boundary and are shy about it, I'll make it easy for them. And I'm not claiming any superiority, but if you want to see how something else is presented or packaged, you're more than welcome to, because you can only have, how do I put this? Western capitalism is really based on an intelligent consumer, and you can only have an intelligent consumer if you educate them. So give them the material so they can judge for themselves and let them make the choice.
Well said. That's a nice analogy. Well, Tuhon, Belton, same question. Can it be improved upon, or is it just too vague?
No, I don't even know if unification can really work. I think acknowledgement of each other and recognizing the other groups as a brotherhood is better than saying let's all unify. I think it's a little too late too soon, but we all recognize the source. I think even when certain organizations felt like they were detached from GT, they still did seminars in his name and honor, even raising money for him. Everyone loves and respects, the source. And so when we learn from other people, we grow. Teaching is a skill, and seeing how other people teach to me is fascinating, and then you're going to run into material you thought you knew and you didn't know. Like I said, I went to Tuhon Romel's seminar or Zoom, and he was teaching ocho ocho. And I was like, ocho ocho, 8 8. So I was like, oh, I don't think I know this at all. Hey, and I'm publicly saying this, and I'm a Tuhon. So I was like, what the hell's ocho ocho? Then he started doing it, and I was like, oh shoot, I recognize this. Again, GT taught me a different way. He just threw information at me, just fire hosed me, and he let my brain kind of figure the rest out. And that's just the way he taught me. He asked me 64 attacks. I've asked him that. He said, no, you don't need that. Just work on your movement. I teach you how to fight. Okay, maybe he saw a fighter in me and wanted to teach me fighting mechanics, and I don't know. But GT taught me differently when he was by myself with me. He taught me differently when there was other people around. When the military guys showed up, when the The Philippine Special Force showed up, he taught it differently then too. When other higher level practitioners came, he taught differently. And the whole time I was just watching what the material he teaches me while with each different group. And I think I told you guys the story. I think I'm diverting away from the question. So
Okay,
can
go
different groups,
ahead.
can different, yeah, I think learning different materials, can different groups learn from each other or can we unify? So I might have something. I guess it started with Tone Ramel. I might have something that you've never seen. I might have a different interpretation, and why not? And why not? Why not learn from other people that got curriculum in a different manner, expressed it in a different way, and I think it just flourishes the art. It keeps it going. It honors the art and the system and the founder, and we're all doing what we're doing, what we love anyway. But to sit down and do a council of whatever and like, oh, we recognize that guy from that guy. Okay, let's talk. What are we going to accomplish? Are we going to start to put things down and say we need to teach it this way? Are we gonna say this is the fees that we need? I don't know how that's
I
going to
know.
solve
I don't
anything.
think that's going to work. I just think if you
Yeah,
guys, if more of the organizations, those who are kind of at odds with each other, if that can improve just for the sake of the art and the students, yeah, I don't think you guys should unify at all. I think you guys should keep your separate flavors. I think that would actually be negative to even attempt to do like establish a council or something like that.
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm in agreement with you guys on that for sure. Um, Tuan Jack, is my opinion as time goes on, I think this stuff will diminish as the older unfortunately die off. A lot of these things just get squashed through just going away, or they're just not fostered the negativity. And I think the up and coming students are certainly not going to continue to bring it up, generally speaking. Am I wrong, or what's your opinion on that?
I think that's a half truth. And I say that because it would be nice to see the natural course of things get squashed as things develop down the road, as time starts erasing things. But here's the thing: one of the things that makes kind of Piketty Treasure kind of fun and fascinating is there's a folklore that's associated with it. There's all the stories of the escapades of Grand Tuhon and a lot of people from the first generation stuff. And when that stuff gets carried along, it makes it fun to learn. But then people again start having the good biases. So what has to happen is yes, the passage of time, but I think people have to be in future generations very conscientious about how they conduct themselves. Are they buying into this prepackaged advertisement that they bought into, or are they just really making up their own minds to inherit the work, the art, without taking the biases of others? And I know I said that before, but that's really at the heart of this. Can the future generations do it for the sake of the art and not for the sake of the personalities? I think that's going to be a critical thing. And another way to look at this is if you look at the instructors, the instructor cadre across all the organizations, yes, we have to play several roles. One is that of as an instructor, someone who's assigned to give away knowledge. We have to be fighters because you have to kind of be able to validate, what you learned. You're also kind of like museum curators, where you can take something that you learned and preserve it so you know that information that you were taught is not lost. But at the same time, you're developing because you're taking the stuff that you inherited and seeing how far you can kind of take it. And then at the same time, you also have to be a good human being, because if you're not, you're going to be exactly the kind of person that you're trying to protect yourself against. So you have to get those things in the right combination. And that's some of the assignment of today's cadre of instructors. They have to make these moral people who are skilled, who are articulate, and have this invested interest in preserving it. And that's a tough balance to get.
John Belton, same question. Will this, with the new up and coming population coming in and all that, do you think this will diminish, or am I wrong?
I think that's a leadership question because, like Twin Jack said, it's that prepackaged thing you're buying. So you come in, and is it prepackaged in such a way that's like, welcome to Warrior Strength Filipino Martial Arts PTK Tertia class. Before we begin, let me give you a story about this Tuhon, that organization, and we don't associate with those guys, and da da da. Let's train. Or is it just like you're here to get the art, and then show through leadership and an egoless attitude, like, hey, if you're gonna go to Virginia, go see that guy. If you're gonna go here, go
Mm.
learn. And talk about the good things about how big and widespread the art is because of the efforts through these men and Grand Tuhon spreading the art. And I think the student can appreciate that when their outlook is like a child. When they're still learning something, their outlook is different from when you start to put preconceived notions in their ideas and in their heads, and you start setting in biases and roots, and these seeds start to grow. Now further down the road they might run into something and they come back, hey, I didn't know, is that true? And you're like, that's old stuff. And it's your job as a leader to either divert that and just talk about the art and grow them as a martial artist and a Filipino martial artist, or you can go back into the same cycle that's been plaguing a lot of organizations, including PTK. And so it's up to the instructor, you know. And again, a lot of that, like Tuhon Jack said, COVID. A lot of us have reached out to each other. There's a lot of communication because of the what technology has done because of the world at that time. And now it's just like, oh, hey, man, what's this group? I mean, this John Jack. I go, dude, great guy. Check him out, man, if you have a chance. Yeah, his stuff's online. I was thinking of buying his DVDs. What am I supposed to do? Get jealous and get mad, or be like, it's awesome, man, go for it. I mean, it changes everything. That
Yeah.
support system, me supporting the art, supporting another Tuhon, and then the student just like, this is a wonderful art. I didn't know my brotherhood was this big. Rather than be like, yeah, screw that guy, man. Can't believe he's part of that guy, under that dude, who then pissed off GT back in 19 whenever.
Yeah, in
You know,
1989 when he was. Yeah, I know. I know. That's
so it's
yeah.
silly, and it's like, dude, what were you doing in 1989, young one? So why concern your things with issues that were in the past, that. So I
Mm,
think time will tell, and it's up to the leadership to take initiative to plant the seeds of the wonderful things PTK has to offer, other than prepackaging it, like Tone Jack said, selling it as a prepackaged biasness of crap that people have been doing over the years.
yeah. I
I think it was like my friend Dr. Tim Hartman, and I don't know if he originally coined this, but he says something that sticks with me to this day. He said, the rising tide raises all ships.
yeah. That's his quote.
Yeah,
Yep.
and it's
Quote.
it's really kind of a beautiful quote, because I mean,
It
I
is.
think by making suggestions to go see
Yeah.
Tuhon Belton or Tuhon Jim or
Yeah.
Tuhon Nick or whoever, um, you're showing one confidence and security in who you are, and
Absolutely.
right, and by making someone else strong, it brings, for lack of a better term, publicity to everyone. The example that Dr. Tim used was Kuya Doug Markita's increased popularity. And I guess,
Mm,
so he has his detractors, but Dr. Tim was like, wait a second. Every time he goes on that show, he raises awareness of FMA. So even if someone wants to study with Kuya Doug and isn't able to study with him, they might start looking for FMA in their area. And so the local instructor gets some love and attention. And so it increases awareness of FMA and people's participation in that, and that honors my ancestors.
yeah. No, I agree with both you guys. I think you guys articulated well. And then I totally agree with you, Tuan Belton. It's in the leaders. If the leaders are freaking spilling out crap and just toxic, well, they're gonna make toxic students or sway them into that arena of negativity and all that. Because why? They know what they know. They don't know what they don't know. So if this is their first experience, they're tending to rely on what they're telling them until they know better or see better. So I think leaders like yourselves and all that who are not doing that, I think is going to greatly help, the community. And goes across the board, and this doesn't have to pertain just to PTK. I mean, this goes across any style of martial art or whatever, but definitely in the leadership and all that. So I'm definitely with you both on that. Um, what do how do you handle, if your students come up to you and all that, bringing stuff up like this, how do you handle it? Like, how do you address it with them? They kind of, it's obviously not an easy situation, but Tuhon Jack, how do you handle it?
Stirring up the past.
Yeah, like if they come up to you, hey, I heard this and all that, and it could be very genuine. I mean, they're not trying to stir up stuff. Maybe it's a genuine question. Like, how do you handle it?
Well, I think it kind of largely depends on once I set the motive, and I generally ask myself, is this relevant to your training? Because if it's not, then don't worry about it. But sometimes people will ask because they're wondering, like, why does when I go with this person, it looks like this, like it's a 64 tap with this person, this instructor, it looks this way, but when I study with you, it looks like a different way. And then I think it becomes a valid research question of like, let's look at the errors of who he was teaching at the time and what his goals were at the time. Some of them martial goals, some of them not. And you can start deciding once you start seeing those two different variations and even shop for more, then you have to start deciding which ones seem more functional to you and why do they do it the way they do it. One of the things when you look at like a martial art through particular lenses is you look at teleology, which is the study of goals, and heuristics. How do you experiment with incomplete knowledge to figure out what things are about? So when someone brings up 64 attacks, if they don't understand the teleology, they'll see 64 separate motions and they won't know what any of that's about. And then if someone asks me, hey, what's up with the 64 attacks? What is this about? Because I'm seeing different versions of it. And my answer is, one guy he wanted to make good single stick fighters in a very short period of time. So he took different bits of the existing system and put them together, A, as a form so people could compete in forms, and B, try to give little components that would make a complete single stick fighter in a short period of time. If you look at it through that lens, now go look at the different versions and see which is the one that suits you to those goals. And then once you find the one that's, maybe is to your liking the most, now you got to do the heuristics part. Now you got to put it together. You got to tear it apart, deconstruct it, put it back together to see it's genuine. So you're just not memorizing and regurgitating poses and moves. You're starting to see functionality and body dynamics and how you do things. And it forces them to do that. So going back to the original question of, when students ask me something, if it has some sort of pedagogical value to how they're doing a technique, I might answer it. If it's not, I'll go be like, does it matter? Or find out for yourself. There's one of the big things about PTI is like just keeping the political balderdash.
No, I think Tuhon Bill McGrath, as you know, I mentioned before, I think he does an incredible job for this big organization he has. He obviously leads by example. Yeah, I mean, that goes without saying. Tuhon Belton, same question for you. Like if a student comes up to you, and it could be genuine, they might not be trying to stir stuff up. It could be curiosity or confusement. But if they're bringing up something negative, the way, hey, they said this is wrong, this is that, and like, how do you handle that?
Hit him with a stick.
Just
no. It has happened. So how I dealt with it, I said, well, so one of my students, this is not PTK. This is he just came back from another state and trained at a Muay Thai school that I told him to go to. Yeah, I just don't get it. They're doing this stuff. It's da 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 da. And I'm like, and I know the crew and I respect the guy. And I'm like, it just was awkward, and I didn't think that worked. And I'm like, well, how long you been doing Muay Thai? It's like 6 months. I go, it's probably deeper than what you know. And so, take it with a grain of salt. I'm sure there's it's a class setting. There's 20 people. So learn from that. I mean, what if the principle and the concept you learned is sound, like, you do this to do that, then it can be applied, and they've found a way to apply it. But, it might not seem familiar to you. It might not resonate with you yet. But usually the way I answer the question, and going back to what John Jack said, is it even related to the training? Is it rumor? Is it more like, I heard John hates Jack, and because Auntie Bill and Mary, quite contrary, said this, and something went wrong at the seminar or something. So I'm like, dude, that's just it's not even worth my time. I just kind of I don't pay attention to it because I'm like, well, what do you know? That happened 7 years ago. I don't know the story behind
Mm,
that, but why was that brought up, or why where did you run into that? Well, I read it in a forum, or I'm like, okay, what does that have to do with your training? You know,
nothing.
there's nothing. If it has nothing to do with enhancing your martial arts development and your PTK development, then why are you even bringing this up? Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, but you know the guy, right? It's like why? I go, this ends. This discussion ends. But if it's like, I noticed that when you taught the drill, and then I went there and he taught drill, there were so many other things that were missing, and I'm like, well, that's awesome then. And I just say, then there's a great interpretation and expression, and he's got something, so show it to me, and then I'll be like, oh, it's because of this, and they're like, oh, that makes sense. I usually try to look at the question they're asking, and try to analyze it too, because some of that question is just a lack of understanding that's probably deep, and or honestly it just might be a drill that just had a greater depth of understanding to the Sparidaga or this or that, and maybe they weren't seeing it when they were doing the forums with me, but they definitely saw the application with that guy. And
Mm,
so I explained to them, I go, wow, that's brilliant. And I'll I mean, why am I like, oh, that's bullshit. It's not how I taught it. I'll be like, dude, that's awesome. Let's drill it. And I'll literally tell them to show me, and then I'll
yeah.
do it with them. And so, but that's me. I don't really care. I mean, what are you gonna do? You're gonna respect me less because of that? Oh God, he didn't know that drill, and he was my teacher. You know how many other teachers I know that had 20 more years in the art that I've done stuff that they're like, that's different. I go, yeah, I just have a different interpretation. Doesn't mean I am better than that guy, and
Mm,
vice versa. So uh, it goes back to the leadership again. I just think it's a
yeah.
leadership thing. And I
Agreed.
think as more leaders step up and be the leaders they need to be, then we wouldn't run into this stuff.
Amen. I can't argue that. If more people just get on that train and just, yeah, and hopefully that'll occur. So what? Okay. Overall, by the end of these theme episodes and all that, how do you think what are you guys' suggestions overall, like changing the perception, improving intercommunication with organizations? I mean, like, again, like if you guys could have an impact or you could impart something, like what, and you had a profound impact, what would it be? Tuhon, Jack.
Uh, the willingness to work together. Um, and if you're being kind of myopic, we can certainly talk about PTK, but I just mean FMA in general.
Mm,
And some of my efforts were like towards those joint Zoom sessions, which I'm going to be picking up again. I got to work with people that I might not have been able to work with before, like Roger Aguilos or Lamont Glass or Tom Pena. John Escudero, the different people I've taught with. I don't mean to leave anyone out. And I plan on working with other people. I'm hoping to get Alvin with me, J. Jasper Pugal, Belton, so we'll see. That's some of it. But then also now that things are opening up, in this kind of current age of COVID, for example, and Jolie Brown is going to be up in my area at the end of May, and I would love people to come out. And he's with the PTK WF as well as PTTA, and I've never met Njoli before. In fact, he's going to be teaching maybe this weekend or next weekend down in New York with Jason Jones and Rich Howe, and he invited me to come down. I just couldn't get free, but he'll be coming up here, and I'm going to host him, and he's going to present, and I hope people come and attend. And more importantly, I want them to see that people are willing to work together and build this brotherhood and build bridges instead of standing over burnt ones and say that they're superior. So if Belton, if you're ever in the area, or if I ever come out to the West Coast, I'd love to be able to see you and take class with you. And that's another thing. I don't mean like to come and teach, but to take class, to be in the role of the student, and to be generally learning instead of like, look at what I know. It's like, show me what you know, because I want to know what you know. And that's the kind of spirit that things need to be done in.
Awesome. Same question, John Belton.
I think if more people would step up and show that there's this together, I think people would feel more comfortable. I think it starts even with this podcast like this, and it starts with the global Carenza project. I just think people need to raise an eyebrow and go, "Wow, did Dylan Jack really just hang out with that guy, or like, I mean, again, 200 mils Zoom session. The fact that I entered that Zoom session, he was just like, "Wow, what's up, Tuhon Belton?" Not that I was like a superstar, but dude, we haven't really interacted, and he was just like, "That's pretty cool." And everyone's like, "Hey, Tuhon Belton." I'm like, "Hey, guys," and people were just. It was like an air of. Everyone was just cool. They were like, "Oh, I didn't think that was possible. Why not?" I had no issues with them. I think we all just kind of just, social media is a powerful tool.
I know
It's
that
there for
perception
us,
creates.
and if we use it properly, if we comment on each other's posts, even the littlest things like that, like, dude, that was awesome. Wow, a great presentation, or da 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 da, good job, Tuhon, or da 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 da. And because we're in the limelight, people see that they'll see what I post. They're watching this right now. They'll read my comment, and the fact that I'm making a comment there versus like a that's bullshit, or thumbs down, or whatever it is. And then everyone's like, oh, why did Belton thumbs up that guy? I thought he's under GT, and I thought GT didn't like, or whatever, right? So I think in the littlest things, and it takes little things to build up the effort to be a bigger thing. Like, I wanted to go to the what you guys just had recently over there in the East Coast, but I have too much fights and stuff are going on. But I mean, it would have been cool just to go there as a student participant, not because I'm a Tuhon. I could, don't care. Call me up. I'll high five everybody. Go back to back of the room. I do that a lot at FMA seminars. If you ever see me in FMA seminar, I'm in the back, man. I don't really care. I'm there to learn. So, and then I just say hi to everybody else. It's like, what's up, dude? Look, that's. I wish I had all the money in the world at the time, because I do that. I go to every damn seminar there is and just support. And I think showing that, it starts with the leadership again, and people are like, well, if Belton can do it and he's not biased towards whatever, then I'm sure that's how he holds himself in his classes. I think people will start doing that themselves. So I think, people need to see more of those efforts, of like the hand holding, the shaking hands, the stuff like that. And if they see that, then I think your students, the younger generation, will follow suit, rather than let's just all huddle together, screw that guy, and remember, we're Tuhon blah blah blah's group, and screw them, which has happened
Yeah.
in the
All
past.
right. Well, we're almost done. I mean, I thought you guys did incredibly well tonight with this for this part one, just to again kind of air out, why there's different organizations, how we can change negative perception, and I think you guys handled it both incredibly well. Tuhon Jack, final thoughts for this episode, future episodes regarding the PTK theme.
Yeah, and I come at this with the heart of a teacher, and I think instructors need to remember that the first most basic step in pedagogy is imitation. People will imitate what you do in an effort to master what you do. So the question is, what are you giving them to imitate? And if you just leave it on the physical level, they'll do their best to copy, and they'll struggle. They'll try to figure out their coordination. But when you talk about things that are not quite as tangible, as in the way you conduct yourself, as in the way of bridge building, because it's less tangible, it's a little bit harder for other people to grasp, which is why it's more important to model that as often as you can. If you want your crew to go out into the world, be responsible, be honorable to each other and to others, and to represent your organization will. That's how you'll get your organization to grow, not from chest beating tribalism. You'll attract people for sure, but it
Yeah,
might
but
not
not
be the right type of people.
yeah, you'll attract people, but which ones are do you want to attract? I guess, right?
Right.
Tuhon Belton, same thing. Closing thoughts on this episode. What you want to promote? What do you want to advocate? And the future PTK episodes. What do you hope it comes out of it?
Exciting times as far as growth. I really do sense something going on, and I think if we learn from the past, if we move forward and we grow in PTK, we're going to do what we do best is teach and honor the system and honor the founder too. We're doing that every time we teach. We're doing that every time we spread the art, and I just hope that the brotherhood and the camaraderie just keeps growing, and we all just can just kind of find ways to keep spreading the art together, because I just feel like there's this upswing. We're gonna hit some dips along the way, and it's just a matter of how do we respond to it as leaders again. And we hit the dip, we just rise back up, and we support one another when we get those dips, and we just kind of band together and be like, hey man, that's old stuff. Let's grow, let's keep moving forward. That's the only way to do it. So my closing thoughts is that, and I'm excited to see the other episodes and hear what the others have to say. And I know a lot of people are gonna that come on, and some of these episodes are gonna bring stuff that relates to them and how they got to where they got. But I hope that they bring out more of the end result, not stay in the past and not talk about that pain, because you know pain pain to me is just a reminder of once was. And if you look at it from a neurological perspective, it's just a signal. Either recognize that signal and divert that and replace that with a better signal.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, I appreciate you both coming on. I thought you guys did a great job for part one, and I think you guys laid a foundation for the upcoming episodes, and that was the goal here, among others. But I appreciate both of you, and thank you.
Thank
All right.
you for the time, Dean.
I gotta go
That was
teach
awesome.
class.
You were brilliant, Belton. Awesome.
All right, I gotta go teach Muay Thai. So I
All
gotta
right, guys, you guys take care.
All right, see you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks again, Tuhon Jack. We'll be in touch. I'm going to need some counsel from you and Tuhon Bill. So get that.
Yeah, I've heard of that guy. Yeah.
Have that phone ready.
All right, you got it. All right, take care.
Take care. All right, folks. That wraps up. Good episode. I think a good entry point. Who is next? Saturday live interview. John Leonard Valentowak. And also, he's got Eugene Samuel coming out from California. So I'm going to be covering that. They're coming right to Connecticut, matter of fact. So I'm going to be covering them. So that's going to be live on Saturday, I think early afternoon. But I'll have more information on that. And next on the PTK episodes, I'm not sure. Could be Empty Hand. Might be getting Danny Terrell, Goatee Man, and Tuhon Bill, who also I think has a goatee. Must be a PTK thing. I don't know. We'll find out though. But I think we might be covering that and all that. So again, remember guys, this is just the first episode. I think fair enough to say I could easily see 7 episodes on the PTK thing and all that. So particularly on the curriculum, the old versus the new Tri-V, the different decades and all that. And then last one would be kind of students who kind of cross-train a different system. So yeah, it easily could be 7 episodes, I believe. Anyway, lastly, raffle, Ukrainian refugees, ongoing to May 15th, $10 a ticket. Check out the prizes. A lot of books donated. If you're an instructor, donate a class. You could actually get students out of it. I don't know why more instructors are not doing that. I mean, I've donated a few classes in the previous raffles, and I picked up 2 students. So if you're teaching, donate a 3-minute class. You might get a student out of it. So how easy is that? All right, folks, thank you for jumping in. Stay tuned, and I will hopefully see you next time. And again, don't forget, FMA discussion, join it. All the money received goes to charity. The more subscribers we get, the more views we get, the more money we get to give to charity. You're helping us. You're helping people. All right. Have a good night.